It is day 277, if you are counting, of the second Trump administration. Right now, Republicans are trying to deal with the pain of a government shutdown without actually ending it. Here's what I mean. Democrats say Republicans could end the shutdown by coming to the table and talking Obamacare subsidies. But there is no sign of that. Instead, Republican Senator Ron Johnson tried to pass a bill to pay federal workers that are currently on the job and not getting paid. Democrats blocked that, arguing it would give the president too much power to pick winners and losers. Senate Republicans are also considering a bill to keep SNAP benefits flowing, as tens of millions of Americans could potentially lose food assistance as early as next month. And we have mentioned that the White House is reportedly looking for ways to only pay air traffic controllers. Notice what is not on the list: any bills, any talks to extend Obamacare subsidies. But the pressure is clearly mounting as the pain of the shutdown is spreading. Meanwhile, we are getting a very clear look at who holds the power in the Trump White House. Today, the president announced that he decided not to send National Guard troops into San Francisco. And according to the president himself, that decision was made because friends of his in the area asked him not to do it. And speaking of power, the president pardoned the convicted founder of cryptocurrency exchange Binance. The chief executive, known as CZ, pleaded guilty to enabling money laundering back in 2023. And the president, well, he knows him very, very well. Why? Well, CZ's company played a major role early on in helping World Liberty Financial. Remember what that company is? It is the president's cryptocurrency company. We're going to get into more of that later on tonight. But first, let's just get smarter with the help of our leadoff panel. Peter Baker is here, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times. Andrew Desiderio, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, and former Democratic senator from the state of Alabama, Doug Jones. Peter, let's start with you and this shutdown. Obviously, it is a major issue if tens of millions of Americans miss their SNAP benefits. Is this putting more pressure on one side or the other, or just all of Washington?
Well, it should put pressure on all of Washington, but the question is at the moment whether either party feels that they can, manage to blame the other one for it, right? A lot of people are going to be affected by this. A lot of real people in real lives. It's not a game to them. It's not a political contest to them. But here in Washington, unfortunately, that's the way it's often looked at by many people. And I think that there's this idea that somehow one party can gain advantage over the other on this shutdown. In fact, polls suggest there's not a whole lot of sympathy, frankly, for a shutdown, on either side. They may agree that with the Democrats' position on Obamacare. That's what polls do show. But they don't think that this government shutdown at the moment is something that they're enthusiastic about.
Andrew, you reported that Democrats are trying to take this fight directly to Trump. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, look, they're trying to get the president's attention here. The argument that they're making is that the president is the only one who can end this because he is the one who has expressed at least an openness in the past to negotiating on this health care issue. Remember, Donald Trump wants to make sure that Republicans keep the House of Representatives in 2026. Cost of living is already a major issue. It's going to be a major issue in all of these House and Senate races in 2026. When you add on top of that rising health care premiums, that is a recipe for disaster for Republicans running in tight races all across the country for, again, the House and the Senate. So Democrats are making the calculation right now that the pressure will continue to build on Republicans and on President Trump specifically, because President Trump will ultimately realize that it is in his own political benefit to do something about these expiring Obamacare subsidies so that he doesn't get the blame for rising premiums that come from that as a result. The problem is right now, the president is showing no signs of feeling any pressure whatsoever. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, and Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, seem to have a pretty tight grip on the president right now in terms of his messaging and his posture on all of this. And look, tomorrow night, the president is jetting off to Asia for 5 or 6 days. I mean, this is not being treated as an emergency situation that it clearly is.
And the president has made it clear he does not like Obamacare. He considers it a disaster, but he has yet to present any other plan. Doug, take us to your neck of the woods, because Huntsville is a town with a very high concentration of government workers, and an Alabama newspaper is reporting that people in that town are starting to feel shutdown pains. Nobody's going to dinner. Nobody's taking Ubers. What can you tell us?
Look, this is, I lived through the shutdown in the Senate in 2019. And this is about the time that things start hitting home. It's about the time people quit going to dinner. It's about the time that, clothes are not being bought for school. So, it's hitting some 45,000 government workers in Alabama, and that has a ripple effect into the economy, into the local communities. And I think it's going to hurt a lot more. The difference, I think, this time, though, is people understand that there's also a bigger issue. Yes, it is hurting them now, but they're also they know a lot of their neighbors are going to be hurt if they lose those subsidies. We have a ton, hundreds of thousands of people in Alabama that will lose health care or either see their health care premiums rise beyond what they can afford.
Peter, let's talk about the East Wing, or what was formerly known as the East Wing, because now it is gone. Many presidents have renovated the White House. But is this ballroom project, I don't know how else to put it, sort of the physical manifestation of Trump's second term, doing whatever he wants, whenever he wants, with no guardrails or permission from anyone else?
Yeah, it fits into the notion of a wrecking ball presidency, right? He's taken a wrecking ball to the federal government, demolishing agencies and firing people and having to rehire people they fired because they didn't know they were firing the wrong people and so on and so forth. They have not given the impression over these last 8-9 months of a thought through, considered strategy so much as something that's just out there to whack away at the existing order. Well, this is sort of a visual manifestation of that. It certainly plays into that notion. Now, look, there's an argument to be made for what he's doing. The argument is that the White House for a long time has not had the capacity to have the kind of state dinners that presidents like to have. You can only get about 140 people seated in the state dining room, and most presidents lately have taken to holding state dinners on the South Lawn in a cathedral tent, which isn't exactly, ideal. And so the idea of building a ballroom, I think, it has some people who support it. But I think what a lot of people are looking at here is a guy who took a wrecking ball of the East Wing without asking anybody, without talking to anybody, without having any kind of consultations, no hearings, no, discussions with historians about what could be preserved and how we can do this in a way that doesn't tamper with, a history of a house that doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the people. And I think that the notion that you're going to build this very massive addition that he's talking about that could dwarf the size of the original White House is such a radical change. It goes beyond what we saw with Teddy Roosevelt and Harry Truman and some of the changes over the course of history.
Andrew, some Republicans are defending the demolition, saying the president can do this. He's doing it with his own money or money from private donors, which we can take issue with that. But I want to share what Lisa Murkowski said.
As an American who kind of feels like the White House is people's house, kind of like, oh, did everybody weigh in? We know that everybody didn't weigh in. I'm certainly hearing about it from Alaskans who are saying, what? When did we decide that we needed a bigger ballroom? People are saying, oh, the government's being destroyed. Well, now it looks like the White House is physically being destroyed. The optics are not good. They're seeing the impact of a government shutdown on them and their families that is personal. And then they see Washington, business as usual. We're voting on judges, and the East Wing of the White House is being taken down for a massive ballroom.
Andrew, does it sound like Republicans are in damage control mode? Because even those who say, hey, look, it's not taxpayer money, it's private donor money, it's corporate dollars, which might not be good for the American people. We don't know why those companies are giving this kind of money to the White House and what they want in return.
I think Senator Murkowski described the situation accurately in terms of how senators on both sides of the aisle actually feel about this, right? It's an optics issue, right? I mean, the government is shut down right now. The Senate is in session. The House has been out for over a month now. The Senate is voting on judicial nominees, something that Senator Jones remembers very well from his tenure serving in the Senate. They're just kind of going through the motions and treating this like it's not an emergency type of situation. And then Americans look on the TV and they see this construction, this demolition rather, happening at the White House. And senators from both parties, I talked to them today on Capitol Hill. They said our offices are getting blown up in terms of the phone lines, with constituents calling about this because they're just shocked by these images. And personally, for me, I as I was sort of covering this and asking senators about this throughout the week, I didn't think it would be much of an issue, much of a topic that they would be thinking about.
America, the isolated. There was a time when America could make one phone call and half the world would listen. That era feels distant now. Under Trump, the United States isn't leading the orchestra anymore. It's playing solo, louder and more off-key than ever. What he calls strength, the world reads as desperation. India is frustrated by his tariffs. Europe is exhausted by his unpredictability. Latin America is resisting his bullying. Even traditional allies like Australia are watching every handshake twice. Trump has managed to turn a partnership into suspicion. He calls it independence, others call it isolation. The truth is, power doesn't vanish overnight. It fades as trust erodes. For decades, America's greatest weapon wasn't its army, but its reliability. Allies could depend on Washington's word, and markets could depend on its stability. Now, every tweet and threat shakes that faith. Trump treats diplomacy like a boxing match. There has to be a winner and a loser. But in geopolitics, that thinking breaks everything. Nations stop cooperating out of fear and start planning for life after you. That's exactly what's happening. India is drawing closer to Russia and Iran despite the pressure. Europe is investing in defense systems that don't depend on the U.S. umbrella. African and Asian nations are exploring new financial alliances with China and the BRICS bloc. The more Trump shouts, America first, the more the world quietly answers, then go ahead alone. Even his wins come wrapped in unease. Isolation isn't just a diplomatic problem, it's a psychological one. Once a nation starts believing it's surrounded by enemies, it starts acting like one. Every criticism feels like sabotage, every question like betrayal. Trump's rhetoric feeds that paranoia, a story where only he sees the truth and the rest of the world conspires against him. The result? The United States is more divided abroad than ever. The American brand, once synonymous with opportunity, now carries the weight of unpredictability. Investors hesitate. Students rethink visas. Allies explore alternatives. The world isn't anti-American, it's anti-instability. And under Trump, instability is the only constant. Empires rarely fall with a bang. They fade through arrogance. America's decline won't come from defeat in war, but from self-inflicted solitude. Trump wanted to make America feared again. He succeeded, but fear is a poor substitute for respect, and isolation is a terrible definition of greatness.